get any group of New Zealanders together, I mean people from elsewhere in New Zealand, and there's one thing that they will agree upon, that Auckland is different. I don't mean that they recognise that it's bigger, that's self-evident, but there's something about Aucklanders that is not heartland New Zealand. It's too commercial. The funny thing is that has always been so. This suspicion of Auckland, that they're not one of us, is rooted in the very beginnings of Auckland. Auckland began when Governor Hobson decided that there wasn't enough space for a capital in the Bay of Islands, that it wasn't in the centre of Maori settlement. There wasn't room to expand. So he decided to go to the Tamaki Isthmus. Hobson's choice. Not a very good term, because Hobson's choice means only one option open to you. Take it or leave it. But in actual fact, that wasn't the case at all. There was a multitude of places open to Hobson as the governor. He could have gone to Cook Strait. He could have gone to Wellington, or Port Nicholson as it was then. It had just been colonised. Admirably placed in relation to the two islands as it is today. But instead, he chose Auckland, or the Tamaki Isthmus. Something that you've got to be aware of is that Auckland at that time could be almost regarded as a population void. There was less than a dozen Pākehā here, and Maori settlement was very limited because of the devastation that had been brought about by the so-called musket wars. Hobson was an experienced sea captain, and he saw in this isthmus its potentialities. Two harbours, and at a time when the infant colony was dependent upon water transport. Access to the Kaipara Harbour, as Maori had through a portage in the early days up from Riverhead, or up the Kumeu Valley. And then of course there's the famous Te Tauwaka, the dragging place for canoes, and that perhaps suggested to Hobson as a sea captain another advantage of Auckland. It had access to the Waikato River. It had access through the Firth of Thames to the Upper Thames Valley and the Waikato, through the Waipa, Waiho and Piako rivers. So at a time when, like Maori, the early settlers were very dependent upon sea transport, Auckland was well provided with that. And it's not surprising that Auckland not merely had trading vessels, but it built up a mosquito fleet. Auckland, city of sails. It was that way from the very beginning. But I've suggested to you that this attitude of Hobson grew out of a vision. He saw Auckland as the terminus of oceanic transport. In a sense, he anticipated Auckland as becoming the port of entry into New Zealand, as it is with shipping today. And as it is, although he wouldn't have known this, as it is with air transport. But there's another respect in which Auckland became a nodal site of great importance, a hub. It was not, if I can use a modern term, it's not merely a hub of transport, but it was a hub for the entry of international capital in an electronic 24-hour trading world. So Auckland had this commercial character, and he anticipated it. But he didn't make friends by choosing Auckland. as I've said to you, it was regarded as an artificial creation. And it was settled by people who were not a part of an organised community like the Canterbury or Dunedin, Canterbury and Otago, not a settlement like Wellington, which grew out of the plans of the New Zealand Company. It was people who were just drifting in. And as far as others were concerned, they weren't terribly reputable drifters in either. And this came out in the first Crown land sale. What characterised it was frenzied bidding by speculators. And Auckland started to develop this reputation of being settled by people who were on the make.